Well, at least for now, we have some more understanding of what happened with the Ethiopian Airlines jets that crashed some weeks back. Well, tonight on our program is a talk about the economy, the debate about who has managed the economy better. Well, the minority spokesperson on finance, Cedi Depreciation, has warned government risks sanctions from the World Trade Organization and other trade bodies if it goes ahead with the benchmark valuation of some goods at the ports. He says the valuation is illegal and a breach of the Customs Act. Mr. Forson says the public should not celebrate over the announcement by the Vice President Dr Bawumia about the reduction in import duties. He was addressing the NDC's lecture in Accra.
What they intend doing is that they have informed all of us that they are going to reduce the benchmark values. Unfortunately, the benchmark values itself is illegal. The Customs Act 2015, and Your Excellency, you introduced this Customs Act. Your cabinet passed this Customs Act. I was really instrumental in taking this to Parliament. And if you are to look at Section 67 and 68, it talks about valuation, customs valuation. Sections 66 and 67, and particularly 68. 67 talks about the fact that the only option that customs can use for the purposes of valuation is what we call invoice values. Invoice values, not benchmark values. Customs, the Act in Section 68 introduced exceptions. And the exceptions is where somebody brings in something, and unfortunately, customs thinks that they are trying to undercut or launder money into the economy. Then they will apply for the purposes of risk management, what is known as customs valuation. In other words, database values. People call it benchmark valuation. But the benchmark valuation itself, as we speak, it is illegal. The World Trade Organization frowns on it. And again, the World Customs Organization does not accept it. If you are to implement benchmark valuation, they can even sanction you. So this act that your administration introduced outlawed benchmark valuation. So what if customs is actually implementing benchmark valuation now? It is illegal according to Act 891, and somebody can take them to court.
Well, the Ghana Revenue Authority earlier today directed that various valuation firms at the ports comply with the reduction in benchmark duties. This was contained in a letter signed by the Commissioner of the Customs Division, Isaac Quainso, to these firms. Let's get to the phone line, speak with my colleague Eben Sabote, who has been monitoring the situation at the Tema Port. Thanks for your time tonight, Eben. Can you confirm for us if indeed firms were complying with the directive to reduce import duties at the benchmark level?
Hi, Daryl. What I can confirm is that with my chat with about 3 or 4 of the agents here, yes, the 30% discount on the vehicle charges are taking effect. I had one of the clearing agents here who took me around, his phone on an order he made from yesterday, which he started the payment today, and actually it has reflected. He showed me all the figures on his phone. I also started with one of the guys also who was telling me that, yes, it has taken effect. However, there's some mixed reactions here because they are not understanding the benchmark, levy, which is supposed to be set by the commissioner. What they can tell me and they can confirm to me is that the discount, the 30% discount on the vehicles has taken effect, but they're having issues with the benchmark levy.
All right, Eben Sabote with the latest from the ports there. As he's been reporting, it looks like there is an enforcement of the directive by the GRA, and he's been speaking with some people who actually said the cost of imported vehicles actually reduced. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Eben Sabote. Well, let's get back to the NDC's lecture today. The opposition NDC says Ghana's economy is on its way into an abyss despite claims by government. The economy is on a sound footing. Now, according to the opposition, several figures and indicators churned out by the Vice President Dr Bawumia at the town hall meeting yesterday were untruths. Addressing a lecture in Accra, the NDC MP Isaac Adongo said due to the poor governance of the country, Ghana's place has fallen in the business and economic environment from 5th to 9th place in Africa. Among others, Mr. Adongo also noted that the Ghanaian currency, that is the cedi, is currently the worst in Africa and the 4th worst performing in the world.
The management of an economy is a very serious business and cannot be reduced to comic relief and inciting the public against expectations that cannot be met. Mr. Speaker, whilst the people of Ghana were jubilating yesterday, especially our brothers and sisters who are into imports and are into distributive trade, reminiscent of the days of the first budget of the MPP in 2017, when the people of Abosokan were celebrating the abolition of import duties. I said to myself, this is the second deceit that will hang the MPP forever in 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency the Vice President made a number of profound statements that were not supported by facts. And so even as the people of Ghana were contemplating whether it was the economy that we knew or that we have suddenly been transported to heaven, the international community began to give a verdict. And I'm sad to report and to give a word of caution to His Excellency the Vice President not to once again plunge this country into international disgrace. Yesterday, Bloomberg reported that hours after the Vice President made some of the claims that actually frightened them, the cedi reverted back to its unenviable record of being the worst performing currency in Africa. Your Excellency, Bloomberg reports that yesterday the cedi was trading at 5.61 at a time that the Vice President was in Ghana celebrating this abysmal performance and a disgrace to the international community, to us from the international community, because then we have once again gone back to be the worst performing currency in Africa. But this time, it was accompanied by us now becoming the 4th worst performing currency in the whole of the world.
Mr. Dongo is also blaming the government for the mess experienced in the banking sector.
He lied to the international community that the Bank of Ghana did not support the cedi with any funds. I want all of you to take your time and read the summary economic and financial data released by the Bank of Ghana only for the recent Monetary Policy Committee meeting. And the Bank of Ghana reported that at the end of 31st December 2018, Ghana's net international reserves stood at $3.8 billion. It reported that at the end of February 2019, that is 2 months later, our net international reserves became $3.1 billion. Dr. Bawumia, where is the $700 million of our net international reserves? Obviously, it was pumped into the economy to support the cedi. But my checks reveal that the last 3 weeks of March 2019 saw an additional pumping of $300 million to stabilize the cedi, all with the aim of achieving an artificial 5.2 exchange rate to the dollar so Bawumia could have a way to deliver a lecture.
All right, that didn't quite touch on the banking sector crisis, but we can have a discussion now with Philip Namfori, who has been following the discussions or the lecture tonight for us. He joins me in the studio. So one after the other, we heard from the economic management team, and now the NDC has a rebuttal to all of that. Let's begin with your takeaways first from the lecture delivered by Mr. Dongo, and of course the other responses we got from other members of the party.
Okay, Darryl, like yesterday's one, when I was asked this question by, I think, Sandra on Joy News Prime, on the business edition, I was like, there's nothing new in there for me, because if you follow economic data, if you follow economic discussions, data is available, made available by authorities, Ghana Statistical Service, Bank of Ghana, Ministry of Finance. I always say that when the politicians are doing their discussions, I like to take a step back and look at them. But for me, it was the Cedi discussion and the discussions about the currencies, and then there was one that the Honourable Member of Parliament, that's Mr. Isaac Adongo, mentioned, and he was talking about the fact that when the Vice President spoke, the Cedi took a dip a bit. And I'm sure you've realized in the international scene, when Donald Trump tweets, you see what happens to the stock market. There's a theory in finance called efficient market theory, EMT. And essentially what it says is that information drives the markets. So you see that sometimes we complain about our stock markets being lackluster in terms of movement.
Okay, hold on a bit. We want to fix something right now. But you're watching there, Isaac Adongo addressing the public there, or members of the party, at that lecture that was held on Ghana's economy. So let's talk about the Cedi, because that has been a major subject from yesterday's presentation by the economic management team. Now, he sought to dispute what the Vice President Dr Bawumia said about the Cedi in relation to the IMF prior actions and how that contributed to the Cedi's depreciation, and also about the hesitation by the Bank of Ghana to pump in more dollars into the system. Did he have basis for the submissions that he made today?
Darryl, I always say this thing. There's a certain level of information asymmetry in our economy, in the sense that there's a disproportionate availability of information. I don't work in Ministry of Finance, I don't work in Bank of Ghana.
It's good to know that everybody had the figures presented, and
you see,
made it more
confusing. So I always say that I go by what the authority governing or that has a controlling stake in that sector. So if it's financial, monetary, I go to Bank of Ghana, I take the data from there. That's why I said I like to take a step back from the politics, because if you follow some of these discussions, you become a bit confused. If you look at the Cedi's performance, currencies move all over the world. When there are movements in Brexit, we see the pound fall. When there are movements in Japan, we see its yen move. When there are movements in China, so currencies will move all the time. Our problem here is that we need a lot more of it because of the structural weakness we have in our economy. We don't have enough of the supply, and we have a lot of the demand. And by all means, it will move. This issue about the prior action is part of the IMF conditionalities people complain about. If the IMF hadn't told us that we should hold our reserves to a certain level, I'm sure during the time that the Cedi was depreciating, we would have pumped something onto the system. Unfortunately, we were told to meet a certain thing before you can exit the program. So currencies will depreciate, currencies will move, blips will occur, as George Wafi will always say. There will be blips in it. But it's up to the authorities and the managers to make sure that these effects are mitigated on you and I.
And as you talk, we are watching the current figures on the Bloomberg website, how the Cedi is performing against the dollar. So right now we are standing at 5 cedis, 22 pesos, and that means that the Cedi has appreciated from what we saw yesterday and from Monday as well. What does it say?
Darryl, let me just say this. Fortunately, we have access to the Bloomberg terminal because of the training they are providing for us.
And reference was made to that today.
Yes, and the currencies, what we call intraday movements. Within the day, there are movements. So if you go on the terminal, there's the last price, there's the high price, there's a low price, there's the high price. It can start the day at 5.19, peak at 5.3, drop to 5.2, come down even further. It all depends on the supply and demand of the Cedi. So if you pick, the only time you can look at something is after a year has been completed. So like you have a year's calculation of how the Cedi fared against other currencies. You understand? So if 2014, 2015, 2016, this is what it is. But you can't just pick one day and say this is what it is. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say, because you have to track it over a period of time. And over a period of time, we've seen that yes, it's been depreciating. And
so on the basis of whether or not which government really managed the Cedi well, both of them don't have...
Darryl, respectfully, I will not wade into that discussion, honestly, because it's not about which government. It's about how we feel it in our pockets. Are we better off? When I go and buy my fuel, do I feel the effect? When I buy this from the shop, do I feel the effect? We don't really care about which government did.
Because one seems to give the impression they did better than the other. But let's talk about the banking sector crisis, because it was also up for discussion tonight. And the NDC seeming to blame the current government for the sort of mess we saw in the past few months. Is there justification for that as well?
Again, okay, so Darryl, Isaac Adongo alluded to the fact that an asset quality review was conducted in 2015 and 2016, which showed that most of the banks were highly undercapitalized. The current governor has alluded to this in most of his addresses to the public during the banking sector issues. So if this asset quality review was conducted in those years, technically 2016 was an election year. You wouldn't know who's going to come into power. If you take any action, that's in my opinion, if you take any action and your government is not coming into power the next year, obviously another government will come and take it. So if these were conducted, and then even the Banks and Specialized Deposit Taking Institution Act was passed somewhere in October, November of 2016, obviously if there are reforms to implement, who exactly is going to do this in an election year? Obviously, I'm sure there will be some wait-and-see approach to who is going to win and who is going to carry on with some of these things. So that's my personal opinion on some of these things. There were problems, we have fixed them. We must make sure that we don't go back to this.
Of course, we cannot take away the fact that it was a lot of politics playing in there. But let's take a look at our poll tonight, and I'll ask for your thoughts on that tonight. So we are asking, are you satisfied about how government is managing the economy following the presentation by the economic management team? And having heard what the NDC has got to say today, that is subject for our poll tonight. And in the last 1 hour or so, this is the results that we are getting. 53% say yes, they are satisfied with the way the economy is being managed. 47% say no. And I should add that it's early days yet, because we have 23 more hours to go before this poll ends. But this is what we are seeing right now, a reflection of what people think about the work of the economic management team. And I'm going to throw the same question to you. Okay, so that's slightly changing right now as we speak. But what do you think, Darryl, based on what you heard yesterday?
I would say I like the level of interaction they are having with the public. I always say information is key, and if you look at developed capital markets, information drives those markets, e.g. the USA. So when governments come and then they give us credible, good information, I think it's good for the public to consume. It's better than a situation where information is hoarded and then there's a lot of information asymmetry. In a market that already has a lot of information asymmetry, I want to see more of these engagements from the government side to the public.
All right. Thank you very much, Philip Namfor. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
We are heading to Parliament next because the Trade Minister, Alan Chomanting, has sold the house at the KOMENDA Sugar Factory is idle currently because of inadequate planning before its commissioning. Responding to questions on the floor, he said that a technical committee has investigated the idleness and action will be taken soon.
In late 2016, went through a process of divesting its majority shares to a private investor. However, the process was abandoned and aborted due to the failure of the identified investor to fulfill the obligations under the sale and purchase agreement. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry, in an effort to put the factory to viable commercial production, decided to initiate a new process in collaboration with the transaction advisor PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, to attract another strategic investor to acquire the assets of the KOMENDA Sugar Factory and to manage its operations. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to announce that the bid evaluation process has been completed by the transaction advisor, and a recommendation has been made for the consideration of the Ministry and of Cabinet. Mr. Speaker, I envisage that the final decision in respect of this matter will be taken by the end of April this year.
All right, so we'll have more on that from parliamentary correspondent Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, an update on what the Trade Minister had to say before the House tonight. But we just want to show you something happening on our Joy Business poll tonight, what appears to be a shift. So right now, 52% of you saying that you're not satisfied with how the economy is being managed and based on the presentation by the economic management team. And so we've got 117 votes so far. 51% of you are saying no, you're not satisfied. And that's like a dramatic shift from what we saw during the discussion with Philip Namfori. But joining me in studio is Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, who was in Parliament today when the Trade Minister was addressing the House. And so we sort of know what is happening with the KOMENDA sugar factory, do we?
He outlined 5 main reasons how come it's not working effectively. He says that after its commissioning by the previous government on 31st May 2016, the idleness is as a result of serious deficiencies in the planning of the project and other financial and also technical challenges. So he went on to explain that a test run was never completed before the factory was commissioned due to the unavailability of sufficient sugar cane for the test run. He also explained that the factory on the commissioning was not in the position to produce the required amount of white sugar due to the absence of very critical equipment for the machines, including a melt clarification unit, vertical crystallizers, and also what he describes as a dosing system, and a number of other items, 35 of them that were missing from the real equipment. And then he went on to say that even the available land size for the cultivation of the sugar cane was less than the 6,000 acres that would have produced enough sugar cane in order to help the factory run fully, which resulted in it running into
So what are they
challenges.
going to do with all of this information they have gathered?
So there was a report by PricewaterhouseCoopers on what had happened, and additionally them going through the process to appoint a new person to take over. And the minister explains that they've gotten the recommendations from PwC. They've handed those recommendations over to Cabinet, and Cabinet is supposed to take a decision on how the way forward would be, after which, latest by the end of the month, Ghanaians would know how the way forward would be.
Was there any other issue that came up while the Trade Minister stood before Parliament today?
So there were questions about how come the company had been sitting idle and the possible amount that has been lost as a result of this. In fact, in a subsequent conversation with the Member of Parliament for the area, he explained that the valuation has resulted in the value of the factory reducing from around $35 million when it was initially inaugurated to about $12 million currently, and they don't understand fully how come this resulted in terms of the value loss, and they would want the eventual recommendations and the action that will be taken by government to clear the air on how come such a vast depreciation of the industry had.
And it is very sad that such a factory that was once vibrant has been allowed to collapse in that way. Thank you so much, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, for updating us on what's taking place in Parliament so far. So we right now know that an investigative committee, or a technical committee, has ended its investigations into the reason why KOMENDA Sugar Factory is idle, and hopefully some of the recommendations they have made would be implemented to revive the factory. And that'll be it for our program tonight. Just before we go, we want to take a look at our poll again and how people are voting following the presentation by the economic management team. Are you satisfied with how government is managing the economy? That's a question we are asking, and we've seen an additional 50 or so votes since we showed you the poll the last 10 minutes. And so right now, 56% of you saying no, you are not satisfied with the way the economy is being managed. You can go to our Facebook page, Joy Business, and let us know what you think as well. Joy Business on our Facebook page. And that's it for our program tonight. My name is Daryl Kwal. Thanks for watching. More news on our website, joybusinessnews.com. My name is Daryl Kwal. We are back same time tomorrow.